Hi guys. So I'm back for part two of telling my story about growing up in an abusive household. My friend is here. She's going to read basically some questions just to keep me on track because there's so much to talk about. And we prayed before this to let the Holy Spirit lead and to just so I can touch on the main points of what God has done in my life and how He has brought me out of pure darkness. So, um,
Hi, guys. Cynthia, why don't you tell us about your dad coming back home?
Okay, so I know the last thing we talked about was me coming home from school in Texas. The glass had broke, and I just remember he looked like off. If you guys remember the movie Forrest Gump, and how he was out there with Wilson, and he just looked really ragged. He had like a really long beard. His hair was like really gray, um, and he just looked like he had been out in the slums. I don't know how him and my mom got back together or how that correlated because she's not here for me to ask her now. Um, but what I do know is that he ended up staying with us for about a year. I remember in Texas, and we started going to the Kingdom Hall together. Um, and it was it was kind of normal, but it wasn't because he was basically on his best behavior for about I'd say a couple of months, and then my dad started getting very comfortable. And we would go to the Kingdom Hall basically 6, 7 days a week. Um, the the dynamic in the house started back where he just started being very physical, like just I'll just say like when it comes down to like homework and stuff like that, it was no grace for it. Like I say, if you didn't get something right, or say if you had one chance to get like say a question right, and then he'd have a belt, and it was like, okay, you don't get it right the first time, all right, I'm gonna beat you. But he wasn't really, the abuse didn't really start back until we went to Chicago. But I would say probably within that year of him coming back to live with us is when him and my mom started getting into it. My mom was always working, and I don't remember my dad really working. He was always just at the house, or he'd just be kind of just around like stuff with the Kingdom Hall. I really believe now like he was just on his best behavior and trying to mask his mask until he could basically be back in a comfortable state. He wasn't in an area of where he knew anybody, so he wasn't doing anything that was gonna jeopardize him losing my mom. I think he was really just trying to stay in her good grace. But I just remember the people that did like the housing and stuff. I remember them coming to the house, and then my mom told us shortly after that we were moving. And I was devastated. I was really sad because I love Texas. I had many friends there. The Kingdom Hall, which at the time wasn't that, it didn't, I would say the occult and how they really operate, I really didn't see that side until I moved to Chicago. And then I really seen a different side of the Kingdom Hall. Um, but when we were there, everything was good because the Woodses were Jehovah Witnesses and they were very loving people. But when we said our goodbyes and we were moving to Chicago is when literally the gates of hell opened. And I'm not even exaggerating. Like that's an understatement. I just remember we were driving. We were basically, that's the next thing I want to talk about really is when I moved to Chicago, because that's really, really played a big part of my trauma and fear, and hating God. To be completely honest, I thought God was a horrible person because I'm like, how could you allow these things to happen? And it be people closest to you. If there's God is real, then I don't want no parts of this type of God. So that would be the first, I would say.
Okay, so now just tell them about your life moving to Chicago. How did that start off?
Okay. So basically when we moved to Chicago, I think the time frame was around like 99, if I'm um remembering. We moved to what's called Des Plaines, which is like maybe an hour outside of, it's maybe, I would say 45 minutes. It's like, well, I don't want to, if anybody who's from Chicago will know, like Des Plaines is a suburb of Chicago, but it's like a far out suburb. And we moved with my aunt, which is my dad's sister. We moved in with her. It was horrible. Like my aunt, she was very sexist. She was always, everything was like girls had to do everything, boys don't have to do nothing. She had all boys. My oldest cousin Carlos at the time, he would come I'd say probably every year or so to come visit, just visit my aunt. He was like her golden child. My aunt was known for in the family of being what they called the black widow, black spider, because all her husbands end up dead after she married them. They just end up dead. And she was just very a person who had a very dark spirit. I didn't know at the time that my aunt was doing witchcraft. I just remember we would go to shops and she'd buy like candles and incense and Florida water and all of this types of stuff. These things with these blue beads. And she'd come back and she'd burn this incense. And my aunt she was a beautician. She did hair. And she took liking to me, like more than my sister, because I was a very obedient child. Like when it came to my parents, I didn't try them like my sister did. My sister, she would just take, she just was like very, I won't say, no, she was very rebellious, but she just didn't care. Like she didn't care if she got beat. I personally didn't like getting beat. Like that was not something that I liked to partake in. So if I could stay out of trouble, then I would, like at all means necessary. But my aunt, she had a thing where she would like to punish us in ways where like if we didn't do what she told us to do, like we were like basically like her little servants, like cooking, cleaning, everything was like her way or the highway. And I didn't realize my aunt was doing witchcraft and stuff on us until I got years later, and I found out like certain things when I went to a church. But she put things in our food sometimes, like just for punishment. She put glass or just she'd do weird stuff like cut your mouth. You'd be like, and she'd be like, oh, I didn't know that was in the soup. Like she would just do stuff. My aunt was always burning incense, and she used to sell drugs back in the day for like all the football players in Texas. And my aunt was always known for wearing mink coats and very flashy. She always drove like a Lexus, but she was very wicked woman. And I didn't know until probably a couple years later when I got on her bad side that I made a big mistake with crossing her. But we were living with my aunt. My mom and my aunt weren't getting along. My aunt was just she was too overbearing to be like she treated my dad like if that was like her man. It was weird. I don't know how to explain it, but like she would just walk around in like little robes and stuff, like very inappropriate clothing you should wear around your brother, which I thought was really strange. And my oldest cousin, Carlos, he was basically grooming me and my sister and a couple of his daughter, which is a year younger than me. He was grooming all of us for molestation and like, he was basically a child molester, which he did. He went to prison years later, but he was somebody that I really looked up to. I thought he was like my saving grace as a kid. So when he would come from Texas, we would like be so excited to see him because he always like would just buy us gifts and stuff, but he would always just say weird things or have us sit on his lap. But he got all this from my aunt. My aunt was basically, she molested him when he was a child. And I don't know if she ever touched my little cousin, which is her youngest son, but I do know that we all don't talk now. We don't have a relationship now. But things now as an adult are been exposed. And so it's just like, you can't unsee what you've seen. Nobody else in the family really associated with Zelda out of all her sisters and everything like that. Nobody really talked to her. When we were in Texas, when we were in Chicago, which I thought was weird because I'm like, and I never would ask my dad questions Because if you want to ask a question, that's like you stay in a child's place. You don't ask questions. You just don't do that at all. That's not something we would do. But my aunt basically was putting stuff in our food. She would put razor blades in the dryer so that we go to school with like holes in our clothes. The school that we were going to was like predominantly like every race in the world. It was a very mixed school. And at that time, I just I hated life. I hated the school. I hated, like, hate was my favorite word. And living in Chicago was really cold. So I'm going from like a warm climate to like freezing cold, and going from like this loving environment of what I thought was, like a family, to complete darkness. Like everybody, there was no unity in our household, like, because we were living with my aunt. So like, all I know is that when I come home, I would start cleaning and doing whatever I was told to do, and then I would just go do my homework and then go to bed. Like that was my routine. There was no playing. There was none of that. And if you did ask to play without permission, then that's a beating right there. But we were only there for a couple months, and then we moved to Evanston, which is when everything started with us going to the Kingdom Hall. And my sister, she's what, 2.5 years older. This is around the time, it's probably right around Halloween. Within a week span, my sister I was 5th grade, she was in 8th grade. She had went to a party for the 8th grade dance. And I'm not going to say his name just for purposes, but his dad was my dad's best friend. And in Evanston, my dad grew up there. Like, he was born and raised there. So he knew everybody in the town. He knew all the police officers. He knew everybody. And my sister was excited to go to this dance. And Desmond was always, oh, shoot. He was always basically excited to like interact with the girls in the Kingdom Hall. I was younger, so he didn't really look at me like that. I wasn't developed or anything like that. My sister under him was. So he basically picked all the girls up from the Kingdom Hall. They met there, and then they went to the dance. And he was basically sleeping with all the girls in the Kingdom Hall. He was about 25. They were about 13. And that night, he drugged my sister and dropped her off. And then when he dropped her off, my sister not text me, forgot what, I don't know, it was like I had a pager, that's what it was, not text. Lord Jesus. She paged me earlier that night. And like, you have like the codes on the pagers or whatever. And I wasn't allowed to use the phone. But I remember getting worried because the time was getting later and later, and Ashley hadn't came home. And I know the other girls had already came home from the dance. So when I went outside, just because I was like, oh, I'm going to walk the dog. I went outside. I seen that she was on the front lawn, just like unconscious. So my mom ended up calling the police, and the ambulance and stuff came, took her to the hospital, and they said that she was raped. And then she ended up telling me, because the police and stuff asked, and my dad was like, oh, I need to speak with my daughter. But he knew who did this. And then he went, after we came back from the hospital, we went back home, and he went to, I guess he went to go confront him and his dad, which was his friend. But my dad ended up dropping all the charges and taking a settlement from his oldest, or I'm sorry, not his oldest, his father, because my dad was like heavily using drugs. And at that time, the Kingdom Hall, they basically told us we couldn't come back. We couldn't be a part of the congregation because we lied on this man. But everybody knew that these things were happening. And I don't know, but I know that these elders in the Kingdom Hall were doing stuff with the girls. And the other girls, I guess they just never they never said anything, but these things were going on. And this is supposed to be like a place of worship, a place of God. So when they disfellowshipped us from the Kingdom Hall, I didn't understand. I thought, like, if this is a place of God, why would you guys disfellowship the whole family and tell us we're basically, we're not allowed to speak? Because when you get disfellowship, you're not allowed to have any communication with anybody at the Kingdom Hall, not friends, not family, nothing. So I was like, okay, cool. Like, I was like, you know what, I'm done with anything God related or anything of that nature. Shortly after, it was Halloween, and I don't know what it is about Halloween, but at the time I was like trying to try out for cheerleading, and I used to do cheerleading when I was younger, but I wanted to do it in Chicago. But in Chicago, their school system was different, so like the way things are done in the South is completely different in the North. So we were all rehearsing for a cheer routine, and we had the music blasting, and I heard something like fall, and then I stopped the music, so I went to the back of the house, and I'm like, who's like, somebody was like, basically, I thought I heard something, so I went to the back of the house. Ended up being my sister was playing, like playing around, so I locked all the doors in the house. And the reason why I say this is that she saved our lives, because shortly after she left, she was out. Ashley was out with different guys all the time, not doing anything with them, but she was just always around guys older than her. And I know that was her way of seeking comfort because she didn't get it at home. So I was like, all right, I'll cover for you. Cool. I'm going to finish this dance routine, and then I'm going to hurry up before our dad gets home. I never called him dad. I would call him by his first name, because in my head, but I would just say, okay. Like, I would say, yes, sir, no, sir. Like, I never would talk to my father as an endearing anyway. I was just completely afraid of my father. But we were doing the routine, and I heard a voice. I didn't know this was the Holy Spirit at the time, but I heard a voice say, run. And so I turn off the music, and the other girls, they're still talking. I'm like, everybody shut up. Like, I told everybody, be quiet. And I heard like something knock over. And I heard the voice again say, run. And it was a loud voice. So I said, run. And we all started running. I turn around because we're running to the back door. And if we wouldn't, my sister would have played that prank on us and locked the doors, he would have came in the house. So he had this huge machete. It was like,
Who came in that?
It was a man. He had all black on from head to toe. He had like his head, everything was covered, but he had a huge machete. And at the time, and I forgot to mention this, we had one of those VCR recorders. My friend Stacy's mom was in Jamaica, and she was coming back the next day. So we had that recording, like basically we were re-recording over it so that when she came back, which would have been that Saturday, she wouldn't have seen anything we were just recording stuff. We were just being kids. But the reason why I mentioned that is because when we left the house, we ran out. My dog was just in the house, just barking. I had him on audio saying how he was coming to kill me and my sister, but he said I would have killed everybody for witnesses because my dad owed one of the drug dealers like $30,000. So he was coming to kill, and my dad knew that he owed this drug dealer money, but he was just he was taking it lightly. So I remember running and just not, just knees to chest running probably a good 2 blocks over, like, or 2 street. I don't know. It was probably maybe 15 blocks. I don't know. We went to one of my friends, Atlantica. I think I don't remember her name, but we went to her mom's house, and I was just hysterical. I called the police. The police came, and then they made a report. When the police left, my dad beat the living. He was like, I didn't tell you to leave the house. I'm like, did you not know what just happened? And he was telling my mom came home from work, and he basically told my mom, like stay out of it. And so I got beat for basically protecting my own life, which I thought was crazy. So about 3 times after that, the man came back again. 2 other times he came in through the basement. The second time it was with a gun. And at that point, I was just completely in fear. Like the house we were living in was this house on Brown, and it was like the hood of Evanston, but it was like my grandfather owned all these houses. So we were living there, but the house had been burned. So the walls were black. Everything was burnt. If you've ever been in a house that's been burned, it's not livable. It's not it was just really bad circumstances. So my dad at the time was just heavily on drugs. My mom was always working. I really never seen my mom because she was always working. And my dad, he would just, if she wouldn't, when my mom would get paid, if she didn't give him money, then he would like beat the hell out of my mom. I just remember him more so just beating my sister more than anybody because my sister just gave him pushback. And for punishment, he would, one time he had her stripped naked and then he took a belt buckle and wrapped her on her neck and then he put her on the like the ceiling fan. And my mom was in the shower and I started screaming. I'm like, Mom, he's gonna kill her. And my mom ran out and then he started beating her, but I got my sister down off the ceiling fan, but she was turning like blue. And these are things my dad would just do. He would just get drunk and he would just beat us. Like more my sister than me. I just knew not to test him.
So tell them about your grandfather.
So my grandfather was basically, he was very like, he treated my dad like as if my dad didn't exist. So my dad's oldest brother died before I was born, but I guess that was my dad's pick or my grandfather's pick. And so when my oldest uncle passed away, they died in the car of carbon monoxide because he wouldn't allow him and his wife to come in the house, is what I was told. And they died. Well, they just got recently had married. This was years before I was born. But my dad always was trying to get approval from his father, and my grandfather would never even acknowledge him. But I just remember my grandfather shortly after seeing that my dad was just using drugs, so he put us out on the street. And I remember coming home from school, and just to touch on school, the school I was going to was predominantly, it was a mix of kids, but I was treated so bad because I had an accent and kids were like, what are you? Where are you from? Like it was just so much harassment, criticism. We didn't get to dress the same type of clothes other kids got to dress like. So it was just always so much torment. Like I go to school, I'm tormented, I'm teased, I'm bullied. I go home, I'm being abused. And after that incident with him strangling my sister with the belt buckle, DCFS, yeah, got involved and they kept coming, but they'd have us come to the police station. They'd have us in like these meetings where we would, talk about like, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm getting off topic. We would just basically, my grandfather was the stem of why my dad was so angry, but my grandfather never showed us any type of love or affection. And my grandfather basically put us out on the street. So we were basically living out of hotels after that last incident of my dad strangling my sister with the belt buckle. So my dad basically kept the police kept getting called because he kept being so abusive. And so my grandfather basically my mom would try to reach out and try to speak to everybody in the family, but it did nothing. Like nobody cared. I never knew that families could be so like, I just never seen somebody like not care. I've always, since I was young, I always had like a very sensitive, I was very sensitive. I was very just aware of my surroundings. I always had instinct and just discernment. But my grandfather, basically, we had went and my mom made us stay over there for a couple of days. And me and Ashley were in the house. And my grandfather, it was my grandmother's house where he still lived with his mistress. And we went in the basement and like the house smelled like pure pee. It was really bad. There was roaches everywhere. Nothing like when my grandmother had the house. But I went down in the basement and there was all these jars of like dead animals. And there's this big old pentagon on the floor. And I don't know if you guys ever seen Skeleton Key, but my grandfather's mistress, Jean was her name. I could say her name. She was just scary. She'd always hit us with her cane, and she must have knew we went in the basement because we were just exploring. And she told me, she's like, if you ever go in there, you'll never come back up. I said, say less. Won't be going back in that basement. But I just remember, I never forget what I seen. And then like she would make soup sometimes, and the soup would have like bones, and it would have roaches in it because the roaches were so infested in the house. So she put like these bones. It looked like human bones, if I'm being honest. And she would be like, "You girls have to eat this." I'm like, "I'm not eating this. Like, you're gonna have to just, I'll just take a beating. I'm not eating this." Like, I would refuse. So sometimes they make us sit at the table for hours. I fall asleep. I don't care. I'm not eating this. Like, because it smelled horrible. It smelled like rotten meat, but it was like a stew. It was disgusting. It was like, anyhow, I'm not eating that. But to basically speak about my grandfather, he um he was just like never present. Like, he never spoke. He just was an evil person. So I'm guessing like that's like where my father got his, from what I was told, my dad, after my grandma died, he just, something in him snapped. So I'm guessing that's like he adapted my grandfather's ways of just being kind of like a wicked spirit.
Tell them about when you moved to Cali. How was that?
So I'm just basically summing a lot of these things up because there's just too much to talk about. But shortly after, because my mom, when I told her about the stuff in the basement, she was like, "Oh no, you girls aren't going back there." So my dad couldn't stop putting his hands on me, my sister, and my mom. So my mom basically, she left my dad and we moved to Skokie. And Skokie was like maybe a good 30 minutes away from Evanston, but we were still going to school at Evanston. And I just knew my mom was not her normal self. Like, she just seemed like she was not feeling like her energy. She was just always working. Like, and that, when we moved to Chicago, I'd never seen my mother, never seen her. She was working multiple jobs. But I remember her sending us to California for a good couple of months. This is like, now we're fast forward like in 2-3 years later. And all these things were happening like literally every week from when we moved to Chicago, from living with my aunt to moving to Evanston. Every week it was something would happen, like something traumatic, whether it be my dad beating on somebody or him getting caught cheating to him drowning our kittens. He has a thing with killing animals. It was just always something. And so for the sake of like the people in Evanston, they'd be like, "Oh, we'll just have him walk it off." But he he wasn't going to stop drinking. He was still using drugs. And after the incident when my mom found out that there was a man trying to kill us, like kill the whole family because of him owing money, and then our grandfather putting all our stuff out on the street, have the sheriff come and literally throw all our stuff out, is when my mom sent us to California. And when we moved to California, I knew something was wrong because my mom never left us ever. So when we moved to Cali, I was with my uncle and his wife. And my uncle was the most amazing, sweetest, kindest man. Still to this day, I haven't spoke to him. I've only maybe spoke to him twice maybe 3 times since this incident. When we moved there, we weren't allowed to basically call my mom. And it wasn't my uncle's doing, it was my aunt-in-law's doing. She was embarrassed that we were biracial. She told people at the church that we were adopted and that we were just a charity case. I had went to, like we used to have the Walkmans, and I was with my aunt and my uncle. We all went to church because my uncle was running for mayor at the time. And I ran to get my Walkman. I was running back and I'm hearing them talk. And then the head, it was like this huge mega church in Oakland. I think it was in Oakland or it was in Pittsburgh, California. And he's like, "Oh, who's the girls? Like, I see you have, these girls with you." And my aunt-in-law, she like goes like, "That's my uncle." And then she goes, "Oh, they're just a charity. We're starting a new charity, and we adopted them." And my aunt turns around and she sees my face, and I got so upset. I stormed off because I'm like, these are supposed to be godly people. Now, mind you, these are people of the church. Now, we're not part of the Kingdom Hall, none of that. These are people that call themselves Christians. So I'm like, okay, cool. And when we went out there, we were given hand-me-downs, Goodwill, which, in our generation, everybody, but she wouldn't even get us hair products for our hair. Even like buying like just the simplest things. She didn't want to spend a dime on us. She would tell us like she was just very like not nice to us at all. My uncle would be like, like try to like tell her like, like be nice to the girls. That's my uncle's favorite. Like be nice to the girls. And she just was like she would threaten us low key. Like she'd say stuff like, you girls don't come out here and think that you're gonna be ghetto. That was her word. I'm like, what do you mean be ghetto? We were teenagers at the time, mind you. I just remember, like I said, that spirit of rejection, fear, abandonment, not having a place where I fit in anywhere. And there was never any love. So it's just everywhere we turned, it was just rejection after one thing after another. And shortly after, Ashley brought a boy into the house. And we were thriving in California for those little 3 months that we were there. But my sister with these boys, she brought this boy Derek in the house, and we like hid him because somebody must have called my uncle and told him, and that was like the main rule: no boys allowed. Well, Ashley brought a boy in the house, so when my aunt, my uncle's wife, came home and she found the boy in the house, she said enough, and she told my uncle like they have to go. So they sent us literally on the next flight back to Chicago, hours later. And I just remember feeling like, okay, I don't think I'm gonna see my uncle anymore. Like I just knew like that was it. And it wasn't like it was a bad time, but I knew that the time there was temporary just because of how she made us feel and how she treated us. It was just so like we weren't family. You would have thought that we were like a burden. Like we would cook. Anyhow, we basically went to California, we came back, and when we came back, my mom was dealing with this lady. I'm not gonna say her name, but my mom hadn't gave her life to Christ yet. She didn't know Jesus, but she was going to this lady in Chicago. We were living in the suburbs, and she was basically a psychic. She owned a psychic shop, and the psychic shop, she did crystal ball, she did candle work, and etc. She was what they call gypsies, and they call women that are American gajos and gajis, American women, American men. And my mom, I just remember her always going to this lady, and I said, Mom, who is this lady? And she's like, oh, she's helping me. I'm, doing work for her. I'm like, well, what work are you doing for her? She's like, oh, I clean her house. I'm like, but how is that helping you? And I just remember my mom being very sick. Like she just had like this pale look to her face. And my mom shortly after was like, oh, I have to go to LA because your Aunt Margot is sick. My Aunt Margot had cancer. She had bone cancer, but she went to readmission and then it came back. So my mom went out there to see her sister. So while my mom was in California, my mom came back. Her legs were swollen. Everything was just, something wasn't right. So we took my mom, and these things has happened so fast track. My mom, we made her go to the hospital. She believed in essential oils and holistic. Everything was herbs and everything natural. She didn't like doctors. She never let us get our baby shots ever. She didn't allow us to get immunizations or anything as a child. Like she would always be stand on like writing letters to the school because she knew like what immunizations did to children. My mom was very one of those type of mothers where she made sure we ate everything, health, everything had to be the best of the best. Like my mom would go without before we didn't have the best of the best foods and stuff. I could always say my mom made sure our health was top tier. But when she came back, we were staying like in Skokie, and my mom's like, girls, and she's like, we're gonna have to move to Chicago. And I'm like, okay, because mind you, she's in the hospital now, and I'm still in school. We're going to school every day and stuff like that. But everything, we were kind of just on our own, and I was like a freshman at the time, and my mom's not coming out of the hospital. So I'm like, what's going on? And now we're staying with this lady. in her house, but she lived at the shop, and then we were staying at the house, which is like around the corner. And this house had these big, like, her room was painted red. The walls, everything was red. She had a crystal ball in one of the other rooms. And I knew nothing about witchcraft or tarot card readings, but I knew they did readings and all these things. And I remember coming to the house and my sister on the phone, and I overheard my sister saying, "Oh, they have 2 weeks for her to live." And I was like, what? Like, I was really upset because I, I was like a mama's girl. So when I got that news, I ended up running away. I went out to stay with a friend. I thought was a friend, but she was doing all types of stuff. And shortly after, like, moving to Chicago is when I started getting involved with witchcraft, because now I know when you walk into that type of realm, you're open doors. So the devil has full dominion and reign over you. And if you don't know Jesus, like, Jesus Christ is the only thing that can save you. I didn't know Jesus. So I'm living in a house that is haunted. There's a hell of spirits in this house. I would see, like, these people, like, it was this one man, I would see him all the time in the house. But my mom basically was she had sick. When she came back from California, she was diagnosed with stage 4 cervical cancer. So now we go from living with this lady to when she found out that my mom had, I think, gave her like over $50,000, I think, of her whole savings. And she told my mom that, "Oh, I'm going to take care of your girls." Well, when this lady got word that my mom was dying, she made us her maids. So now I'm in high school and I'm a maid. I'm cleaning houses, and they'd have these big parties, and we would, like, chauffeur the food and stuff like this. And she'd have this guy named come over, and she was always having, like, people of minorities come and clean her house, she was always needed everything clean, especially when she would do these rituals where she would make these things called a love cake, and she'd make me eat it. Me and Ashley, she'd make us eat it. It's like all these different cakes she'd make us eat. And he tried to rape me in the house. And I remember telling her, like, he tried to rape me, and I'm a teenager. I had on shorts and I need him in the balls, but it was just like, it was no protection. And when I told her what happened, she was like, "Well, maybe you should dress more appropriately." And mind you, all this, while this is going on, my mom's still in the hospital. So now I'm realizing, like, mommy's sick. My dad, God knows where he's at. I didn't want to be even near him because everything attached to my dad was complete trauma, fear, just abuse. Like, who wants to be put in that environment? So I said, you know what? I'm going to start selling drugs. I'm going to start doing whatever I have to do to survive. So she told us that basically we had to get out. We had to move. So we ended up finding an apartment. And my mom came home. And my mom lived up to about a year after her diagnosis. She was only supposed to live 2 weeks, but she ended up living up to a year because me and my sister would take turns taking her to doctors and just, like, trying to, like, make sure she was as most comfortable as possible. But in the midst of all of that is when I met this girl named, I'm not gonna say her name, but I met these girls at school. And the girl D, I'll say that's her letter of her first name. I'm kind of fast tracking. So basically now we're living in Chicago, and at the school that we were going to, we went from, like, basically like a private school to, like, Chicago public schools, which were really bad at the time. There was so much gang affiliation. There's so much, just a lot of gang affiliation. So, like, going to this school, which is way not as worse as going to, I don't know if you guys ever seen the movie what is it? Save the Last Dance, where they were, like, at the school on the South Side, and there's just a lot of, it's kind of like a prison. The Chicago public schools were basically designed to be just like the prisons, like the bells, the food, everything. And the girl D, I started hanging out with her. She was prostituting. She was doing witchcraft. She's doing spells and all these things in high school. And she sacrificed her dad. I remember he got killed in a bike accident, and she sacrificed her dad for more power. He got his head cut off while he was like at a light. He slid through and his head cut off. And I just remember her talking about all these like demonic things. I didn't know about witchcraft. Like I said, I didn't know. I was playing with tarot cards, and I just was so involved in dark. I was so like drawn to it because it was like I'm seeing things happening when people do things, and I'm like this is crazy. And my mom, when she basically realized that this lady that she calls her friend, she found out some stuff that was happening that she had did like to her with like money and stuff. So I don't know how my mom found a church, but she did while she was sick. And this church basically they started like coming to the house and inviting us to like different events. I had wanted no parts of anything with church, anything like that. I was too busy smoking weed, partying. Literally every week I would go out. I almost would die. I would either get shot at. The girl Rabina, who's I just said her name. Her boyfriend would sell me weed, and she was so jealous that she went and she was like I don't know what gang she was in, but she put a hit out on me. So one day I was coming home from school, and like literally these girls tried to like cut me. Like they literally, like I have a scar here on my eyebrow from getting into a fight where the girl she's like, I'm gonna show you how it is to be ugly. And I think the mission was her to like scar up my face, but she realized I knew how to fight. So then she sent part 2 for the girls to basically just shoot me. And every time I almost would almost get shot or stabbed, police or somebody would show up, literally. And the apartment that we were living in was only by the grace of God that we got this apartment, but it had swastika,
Swastikas.
yes, from like the 1940s. The Germans lived there, the Nazis lived there, and it was so haunted. The apartment we lived in was so haunted. Like I ended up even becoming possessed to where I would hear these voices in my head and I would want to react on them. Like it would tell me to do stuff, and I was really like um I was just hearing voices. And this is where I had my first encounter with Satan and God, like angel. I tried to make a deal with Satan, and I basically said, I'll give you my soul if you give me power, because the girl I was hanging out with was getting all this power. And everything I seen that was related to God, I was like, I don't want no parts of that. But as I'm trying to make a deal with the devil, an angel shows up, literally, and said, not her. And then just disappeared. And then Satan disappeared. And he didn't come as like this horns with like, he wasn't that type of person. He was dressed to the nine. He was very handsome, like he looked Italian. He had like on a suit with like everything was just very slick. He was smoking like a cigar, and he disappeared. And then that was the biggest mistake I could have did. But because of the people I was around, that's why you gotta be very careful with people you hang around, because it can really mold and shape your future. But God had a really big calling and protection over my life when I knew nothing about God. I thought God hated me, but God was protecting me. And
So what happened to your mother after she started going to the church?
so when she started going to the church, I at the time was selling weed. And I was always in the streets. I was very rebellious, and I feel so bad about this now because I was just so angry that my mom was dying. But she lived up to a year, which I know was by the grace of God. Um, because I don't think if my mom would have lived that year, probably wouldn't be here today. Like just the way I was living was crazy. Um, I went from being this obedient, very structured kid to having all this freedom and all this temptation. Um, and the girl D, she was like, um, I could take you to my church. And I was like, no, thank you. Because she was going to like a satanic church. And as my mom was getting closer to God, I was literally going further and further into witchcraft, which I didn't know at the time. But D invited me to a party. And I have to say these things. I need to glorify the fact that God really protected me. I go into this house and there's nobody else there. It's just me, her, and like 10 men. And on the table, there's like all these knives and like things that you would use like in surgery. And it's like if you were going to dissect an animal, like things like, and there's guns, there's all types of stuff. And they said, oh, she's arrived. And mind you, I'm a virgin, you guys. I've never had sex or anything like that. All the girls around me was having sex. They were doing things. I never had a desire to just sleep around. Like that never was my thing. I always wanted to get married young, have kids, etc. But, you know, due to like what I was around, that hindered me. But I just remember walking in this house and I knew if I stayed in that house, I wasn't coming out. And she basically was going to use me as her next sacrifice from her father. And I don't mean to laugh because it's not funny, but sometimes I laugh at certain things because it's like, it's traumatizing to think about. But she's like, relax. I'm like, where, I thought this was supposed to be a party. Like, where are all the people? And mind you, these men were like all in black with like combat boots on, and everybody was just sitting there like just stark, no emotions on their face, nothing. And I knew I was in trouble. I was scared. I was so scared. And I hear a voice again. And I hear it say, climb out the window. So I say, can I go to the bathroom? And mind you, this bathroom window was probably like this big, this high. And if anybody knows Chicago houses, like they're big. They like 8 to 10 bedrooms, like especially like it was on the west side. And I locked the door and I keep hearing the voice like, go out the window. And I felt like you could feel fear with like a knife. Like I could feel something really bad was about to happen. Like you could feel like a presence in that house. Like whatever they've been doing it to other people. And as I'm climbing out this window, they start beating on the door. And literally, I got one leg out, my body out, and my other leg was about to come out. And then here comes the guy. He tried to grab me and I like dived out and I rolled. And they come outside. They had a gun. And here comes the police. And it's just like there were so many incidents of where I should have like not be here today, but God saved me. But shortly after that is she ended up killing her child's father because he left her and she said, I'm gonna make you pay. And I remember he was a good kid. Like he was such a sweetheart. And I remember calling him and telling him, don't get in the car. Like, so I have a feeling something bad's gonna happen to you. He ended up getting in the car and he died in a car accident. But she said, yeah, that was my doing. And I remember just hanging out with her and she would like go on Madison Avenue, which is like the whole stroll. And I wonder why she always had all this money. But she was like, girl, you could stop selling weed or whatever. Well, technically I wasn't even selling weed. I would just like steal cigarettes and then resell them for money because I had no money to even eat. My mom was on like an assistant program and we were living in a 2-bedroom apartment, and my mom only had like a little check that she would get that would help us pay the rent. But you know, my mom was dying. So
After your mom started going to the church, would you say that that helped her to get saved and get to know Jesus?
oh, absolutely. I mean, honestly, like God had a plan because God used my mom when she was sick for her to, I honestly believe my mom's prayers and the fact that her dying wish was to make sure we were okay because um 2 weeks before my mom passed, she had an encounter with Jesus. It would be so bad. Like my mom, she was in like she was in hospice. So the hospice would come and check on her. I don't know if the hospice people are the ones who got her in touch with the church, but these people were so sweet and so kind, but I didn't want nothing to do with them because I was so used to people that say they're godly being wicked and evil, and everything that was attached to people that were God fearing was evil. So I was just like, yo, okay, mommy, if that's what's working for you, then kudos. But 2 weeks before she passed, she had an encounter, and she said that Jesus came in the room. And at the time, I've had my own encounters with Jesus. It's amazing. But at that time, I knew like she had a serious encounter, because she woke up and she was like like she was just crying hysterically. And she was just like, he said that he's going to take care of you girls, because she was scared that she didn't want to pass away, because she was scared of what was going to happen to us. Um, and I just remember she would go to church like literally all the time. Like, mind you, I was a teenager, so I was always outside. I was always into stuff that I had no business getting into. Um, but my mom's prayers, I feel like at her dying wish, is one of the reasons why God really protected me. And two, just God had a big calling on my life. I always knew that I had a heart for people, but due to what I have been going through since a child, and just the fact that every week or every other day I was almost getting killed or shot at or getting into fights. Um, it was just always something.
What was her dying wish?
For us to know Jesus and for us to be saved. That was her dying wish. And I did ask my mom, oh my God,
It's okay.
I'm not gonna cry. I didn't think I was gonna cry. Watching somebody you love just die and like shrivel away is so heartbreaking. Because my mom was my everything and never had a father. So for my mom to be so loving, even with her, like, and to just the fact that like her whole life she's just such a selfless person, and so I thank God that I had a mother like her, because I feel like if I didn't have that type of mother, I wouldn't be the woman I am today and have the type of integrity, and just God really knew to put that implant in me, because everybody else around me was so wicked and so evil. So losing her was like the hardest thing ever. Like, your life changes and you don't know the type of love. Like, a mother's love is I know some people have had the worst experience with their mom, but mine was beautiful, and losing her broke me. Like, it took me about 15 years to fully like come to terms that she's just not coming back. And I used to beg and plead with not harming myself, and that's how I came to Christ. I almost committed suicide maybe about 6 months after my mom died. And I wasn't really around my mom when she was sick, because I just didn't want to see her like that. But I just remember right when she did die, the day she passed, it was so bright. Everywhere just seemed so bright. Like, everything was just super like sunny. And my uncle and my aunt were in town from California, and they when I see my mom, I lost it. Like, I got in the bed with her, and she was really cold, and her face was like a scream mask. It was like this, because she was so skinny. And I just remember shaking her. But at the same time too, I had this level of like knowing that she was okay, because I knew she talked about this man named Jesus. So I, went to her funeral, and when I went to her funeral, the guy I was dating at the time, I remember he dropped me off and told me good luck. And my dad didn't come to the funeral. My aunt, none of my dad's family came to the funeral. Nobody helped us with the funeral. And mind you, I was 17. I just turned 17. Nobody came. And to this day, I can't remember my mom's anniversary of her death, because I just block it out. I always have to ask my sister. But it was such a a time that I just, like, my life changed forever. And it's been really lonely, because even now, glory to God, like, I'm thankful, but there's pieces of me that I know are still healing from that type of, like, love that you get from a mom. So I thank God for my mother, because, like I said, if she didn't if she didn't basically give her life to salvation, yeah, probably, I don't know where I would be right now. So, but I don't want to continue anymore, because this video is going to go so long. But I do want to stop here. Like I said, this testimony is just so much to talk about, but I just thank God for giving me the courage to even speak on these things, because today was even a hard day, like, up to coming to start talking about all these things, because, the enemy doesn't like for you to share about how he's been defeated. But I just pray that my story can help somebody, and I will, on the next video, start with part 3, because there's still more to talk about. But yeah, everyone have a good night.